Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. I am so just flippin' excited to talk to this lady today. She has so much experience in the world and helping women that you need to stay tuned for this. So let me just introduce her and then we'll move on. So today's guest is Geeta Sidhu-Robb, and she's the founder of GSR Coaching and the CEO of Nosh Detox with over 14 years of experience and nearly, get this, helping 19,000. Did you hear that? 19,000 women. So she's got some good stuff to tell us. Geeta is a powerhouse success coach specializing in supporting perimenopausal women. Her focus, helping women lose stress weight, reconnecting with their bodies and stepping fully into their power mentally, emotionally, and physically. Her work transforms not only how women feel in their skin, but how they show up in their life. So, Geeta, thank you so much for being here. I just really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. So, I have done a bunch of snooping around about you, and I have some really great questions that I want to get into about business and how you help women. But I also found your past quite a dramatic shift that you had to go through in your life, where you went from Bentleys and Ferraris and living in London to sleeping on a friend's couch. We don't need to go into the whole story, but do you want to just give us a little bit of a background as to where you were and how it didn't kill you?
Yeah, well, that's an apt phrase. My then husband and I think I must have met him when I had just turned 30. We were both quite young. He was like a couple of years older than me. I already had one child. And we got together and we got pregnant very quickly. And we built this company alongside building a life. And it was very successful. And it just exploded. And we had this huge house and we had 7 cars and we had a private plane and a home in Monaco. But my marriage deteriorated very badly.
Mm.
And my son said to me one day, I think we need to leave before he kills us.
Oh,
Uh, and so it was a good phrase that you used. It was accurate. And I remember just thinking, whoa, okay, so if your child is saying this to you, it's time to get up and go. So I did, and we walked out and we walked around the corner to my mother's house. And my mother, I come from a very old, very wealthy family. And my mother was like, no, 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 we don't do this. We don't walk out in our marriages. And I was like, look, it's not safe. She goes, it's really not my problem. You married him, stay with him. And don't imagine you can stay in this house, which my father had bought for her. And I was sort of sitting there and I was, changing a nappy and phoning school saying the kids aren't coming and, you have juice. And in the 4 hours it was taking me to work out where we were going to sleep and what we were going to do, he emptied all our bank accounts and he emptied every single thing. So I had £200 on me. And then I had a bank card with some like £1,000 on it. So we basically were living on £14 a day after that. And a friend of mine, and I rang one friend and he had 3 or 4 houses and I knew that they were empty. And he was like, oh, no, 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 I'm sorry, I just can't do that. And hung up. And I was like, wow. And then I didn't know what to do. And when I had left the kids, I went down to the supermarket. I'd forgotten this actually. I went down to the supermarket just to buy, I can't remember, something, milk or something. And I came back up to the apartment of my mother and I ran into one of my friends and she said, are you okay? And I burst into tears and I said, da, 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 da. And she went, no, 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 come to me, come to me. And she's like, do you have enough money for a taxi? And I was like, yeah, I mean, here's the money I've got. She goes, no, come to my house. And she took me in. And she gave the kids had a room, and then we had these sofa cushions we put on the floor, and I slept on those. And yeah, we were there. And then he bankrupted me as well because he was trying to cut off the avenues to get me to come back to him.
right.
Um, and it was just very, very hard to be completely alone
Oh,
to do that. And the kids were 7, 3, and 1. So
wow.
they were little. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was kind of where we started.
And so how did you overcome that? Because I didn't understand about the abuse that was happening. That makes it even 1,000 times worse. How did you overcome that? You're here today. You've got a speaking engagement tomorrow in Poland. You've helped 19,000 women. Why didn't this keep you down? What was inside of you that said no, 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 no?
I, yeah, because if you think about it, this happens to millions of women, right? So the
Yes.
fact that it happened is not special at all.
No.
Um, it was a couple of things. One was that my children were in private school, and I had this thing where I didn't want them to suffer for my decisions because I was ashamed of the fact that I felt like it was my fault, which
Hmm.
we often do as women.
Yeah.
And I remember him coming by and him saying, you know what, if you would just come back, all this would just go away magically. And I was like, you absolute terrible. I mean, don't want to swear, but I
Yeah.
was so upset by that phrase. And it was so malicious and unfair. And he was bullying me,
Mhm.
I was like, huh. Thank you for that. If you hadn't been such a twat, I might have come back. But so that was the thing where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it came from what I would not do. I would not go back to him. I was not going to sell my body because that didn't feel right to me. I was not going to get married again because those were the easy choices. I was surrounded by people who were very happy to marry me, who had a lot of money, and it just, I didn't want to take the statistics of taking your children into another man's house are very bad. As like,
Hmm.
I'm not taking my young kids into some other man's house and this stuff. So I was like, okay, well then you better do something about it. Um, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Because we grew up with so much money, I felt entitled to a good lifestyle. And I felt like my children were
Mm.
entitled to that. And I wanted my kids to meet their cousins and not feel like the poor relations.
Right.
I think it was probably all just driven. I
Yeah.
often say that I'm lucky that I had the children because
Yes.
it was driven by what I wanted for them. And I don't know that I would have done the same for me, but I was willing to do 1,000 times more that for them.
And I think that's what all the women want
Yeah.
when we have children is we're like, okay, what for myself, I went through nothing like that, but I remember I had to make that decision. What is it I want my kids to know? And I decided this is what I want them to know because this is going to be best for them as they grow. And so that was the direction that I went. Didn't go that direction just for me. So you're so right. Just so right. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Hopefully that will help. Hopefully that will help if there's
I
a
hope
woman
so.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that, I know that we think when bad things happen to us as women that it's almost like a way of putting us down, but
Yeah.
I think that you should not choose that. And I
Yes.
chose the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, well, let's get into what you do today. So, you have helped nearly 19,000 women. So, what originally led you into that kind of work? And what was the personal moment that sort of sparked your mission?
Poverty.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say
yeah.
poverty and wanting to eat was very important, having a roof over our head. So
Yes.
when this happened, I started to make money by negotiating things for people, like the dry cleaners around the corner from me. He couldn't get a license from the council and he had tried for years. I was like, let me try it. And I rang them up and it wasn't even that difficult. He just needed to have a conversation. And the guy gave me the license. And I wish I had known how much money he was going to make because I was being a woman, so I didn't even ask for that much money. But I
Yeah.
remember he gave me 200 pounds. I was like, wow, great. But he went on to make millions off that. And so I was doing all this work and I had no idea how to do any of it. Like people would say, can you do this? And I'd be like, sure. And I'm Googling what on earth is this thing that he's asked. I had no idea. And I would just say, yes, I can, because I would be, how much? How much are you going to pay me? How much will you? And that's all I ever asked. And so I went from there to thinking, and my son was anaphylactic. So
Mm.
he was very ill. So every time, and he had cardiorespiratory arrest and was in a coma and all this stuff. So he came out.
Oh,
I was like, I have to find a way to stay at home and make money. But in those days, it wasn't done. There was no one who stayed at home and made money.
right.
So I thought, I don't know what to do. And then I was like, well, I know how I made my son well again. I cured his eczema, I cured his asthma. So I knew the human body very well. And everybody was always like, oh, will you come and help me with this? And I did speeches about living with food, with allergies and diet, nutrition. And so I was like, well, I mean, I kind of know how to do that. So why don't I just do that and see if I can make it into a business? And so that's how I ended up. I would say, used to say like this, we don't do the food delivery anymore. Now we do just the advice.
Yeah.
But I would always say, and I would do these speeches about it, and I would say, okay, and this is, oh my gosh, 2002 or something
Yeah.
ridiculous. And I would put up a bottle of Coke, and there's like 100 people in the audience. And I'm like, if you drink this, will it affect how you think and your brain function and how you feel? And people go, no. And then I would pull up a bottle of vodka and I would put it on the table. And I'm like, but if you drink this, will it affect how you think and feel? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then.
Yeah.
And so we came from that space, and so I started the kind of food delivery of the business, and did it that way. And so at home in the UK, I invented the first home delivery of gluten, dairy, egg, and nut-free food. I invented the first juice fast. So if you ever did a juice fast in the United Kingdom, it's because I invented them and I started delivering them. I brought in the first cold pressed juices. We brought IV drips to the high street. So we changed the face. And also,
Ah,
there was never anything about women and their health. And Julie,
right.
it was always about women are small men. And I was like, this is not true. Women eat differently. They need different things. You need fat in your, and I used to say, you need fat. I used to say, give up sugar. It's addictive. Do this. 2003, 2004, and no one was saying this. And I would say for cancer, you need to have a healthy nutritional diet. So the medical health regulatory authorities hated me every week. Every week I got called in front of a committee. And, and I was an ex-lawyer, so I read all the regulations. And our medicals, pharma doesn't have as much of a hold as they do in the US.
Yes.
And they would say, you can't say this. And I'm like, well, actually, I can, because I read this thing here. And I was
Yes.
like 30 something. And I'm like, it says I can.
Yeah.
And then the next week I'd be back in there because I had said bread is not good for you. I don't know. So it was just battle, 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 battle. And
Wow.
that's where it came from.
Wow.
But it helped women because women
Yes.
got to look at their bodies in a completely different way.
Well, explain stress fat, um, because I think that's a problem that a lot of us have.
Right. And I got to like 40 something, one even, or two, and my body just changed. And my period stopped, and I got this huge belly, and I'd always been this skinny person.
Yes.
And it didn't matter. I got pregnant, I got really huge, and then I get skinny again. And it wasn't like an effort. That's just the body I had. And I got this massive tummy, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? So I went to the doctor, and he goes, oh, you're either pregnant or you're in menopause. And I'm like, what's that? And he went, well, your periods stop and then it'll be, and I'm like, that's it. Like I wanted to murder this man. And I was like, that is not the, and so first I thought I was pregnant. I was like, whoa. And you get your head around it, and then of
Yeah.
course I wasn't pregnant. And I didn't understand it. And so I was like, I don't want menopause. I'm 41. I'm going to reverse this thing. And so I worked out how do you reverse it and what happened. And that's when I worked out that and I did a video on this on TikTok. And on TikTok, I said, men know nothing about how women gain weight. Women gain weight around their
Mhm.
stomach and their upper thighs. And they gain this from the age of about 35 onwards. Perimenopause lasts for 13 years. And the biggest metabolic upheaval and each one of these sentences took me about 17 hours of research to work out. It's the single biggest metabolic upheaval that will ever happen to you as a woman. And your estrogen doesn't come from your eggs, it comes from laying down fat stores. So your body tries to lay down fat stores so it can access estrogen because you need it for life. Okay, no one ever said any of this. So I put this in a video.
No.
And I said, you have to stop working out. You have to stop running for cardio. You have to eat 5 meals a day. You have to eat 5 times more than you eat today. And don't drink just coffee until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you have to eat fat. And
Mm.
fruit is not fat. It's not sugar. And my video went viral. I
Ah,
think it had 1.9 million views. And it
wow.
went viral because there was 100,000 men saying, you're an idiot. Science is science. And 100,000 women going, you're an idiot. She's telling the truth about my body. And
Yeah.
these women it was heartbreaking, Judy. They were saying things like, I have eaten 846 calories a day for 2 years, and I kept a food diary, and I went to see my doctor, and he said I couldn't count.
Oh,
And I mean,
oh,
it makes you suicidal. It's so bad. And I was just like, this is bullshit. So I was like, right, how do we educate people to change this? So I came up with the concept of stress fat because the reason this happens is because it is cortisol fat. And
hmm.
stress and cortisol is a stress hormone. So when you put on this weight that nothing will remove, you've got to look at it as a cortisol fat, which comes from stress. And you've got to change the way that your body functions and your mind functions so that you can release this fat, because you cannot release this fat any other way than this new way of working. And
Wow.
that is your perimenopause journey.
Yes.
And the reason nature, who is very intelligent, invented perimenopause because it is the very first time in a life of a woman she's forced to put herself first.
Oh, I love that. And you're right. Oh my goodness. Yes,
Because
you
if
are
you
so
don't put
right.
yourself first in
Oh,
perimenopause, that is going to be the worst experience of your life.
yeah. Wow. So you also say that your method combines mental, physical, and emotional work. So how do those elements connect in that process?
Well, when you are living on stress fat, what actually happens is three basic things happen to your body. Firstly, because you're being run by a cortisol hormone instead of by sort of an estrogen dominant process, your body's behaving differently, which is why suddenly like you becomes an alien. And what happens with that is that your sleep, your body behaves like it's being chased by a dinosaur,
Yeah.
and you're constantly in run mode. So the first thing is that you never sleep properly. You wake up exhausted. So you're wired when you wake up because you never sleep well. If you're in danger and running from a dinosaur, you wouldn't sleep the sleep of the dead. You would half sleep while looking out for danger, right?
Right.
You crave carbs because the body is you have to eat on the run. So the body is desperate to pull out glycogen out the muscles, use it, and then push the glycogen back in the muscles. It doesn't care about these nice long 3-hour lunches. It's like carbs, 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 and you start to crave them. And you get sugar cravings, which like I'd never eaten anything sweet in my life till I was in perimenopause. And then the third thing is your fertility goes away. So we have a huge, I mean, I talked to my daughters about it, and I was like, if you're 26 and not pregnant, we're getting eggs frozen. Because the only way to get pregnant now is kind of 16 in the back of a car because, normal pregnancy rules don't work because infertility is so massive because of the way that we live, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And so those are the three things that happen. So you've got to approach it. You've got to approach it mentally and see what it is that you need as a person, as a woman, in order to survive and put yourself first. Then you've got to look at it physically and say, okay, what is it that my body needs? Because it has to move, but it cannot move. Like I did CrossFit 4 times a week, couldn't touch it again. Right. I could not go near CrossFit because my body was like, no. And then you've got to look at it emotionally as well. You've got to look and think, what is it that where are my hormones? What do I need? Because hormones and emotions run kind of side by side. So
Right.
you,
Yes.
so, so the solutions are that, or do we want to talk about solutions later?
No, we can talk about solutions now. Yes, please.
So instead of running and doing insane mental cardio, unless you're 21 and you're a man, don't do it. Go for weightlifting. Go to weightlifting. It should become your primary exercise. And cardio should become something you do for 15, 20 minutes, 2 times or 3 times a week, but short bursts of cardio,
Yeah.
long bursts of weightlifting, and do mobility exercises. Because you want to keep your whole lymphatic system moving. So that's the exercise plan. In terms of food, start every meal with a salad because it will stop your glucose spiking, and it will stop your insulin going nuts, and therefore you won't gain the inflammation and the weight that comes from that. So start every meal with a salad. I don't care if it's breakfast. Eat green stuff before you have that, and then eat a meal that is broken up with fat and protein and carbs.
Yeah.
And carbs can be small, but they're not, it's not preventable. Have them.
Right. Yes.
Um, have fruit, have leaves, have green stuff, have all of these things. So that's kind of how you eat. And for the love of God, eat 3 times a day. And the thing I had to retrain myself is because as women, we eat and then wait till we eat until we're less hungry, not till we're full,
Yes.
because we're trying to get thin. In perimenopause, you have to literally sit and eat 3 meals a day, and you have to eat till you're full.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you are not eating the right meal, it's very quickly apparent because you will get hungry very, very quickly. But if you eat the right balance of food, you will stay full for 3 to 4 hours.
That is just amazing. That is such good advice. I have a girlfriend who does very well at keeping the weight off. 6 kids, and she's in her 50s, and she doesn't have a piece of fat on her body. And she doesn't starve herself. She eats 5 times a day. She'll get that can of tuna gone, then she's a hairdresser. So then back to work, and then the next, and it works for her. And I've tried it, and then I give up too soon.
But also that's
Yes.
protein and fat. If you eat a can of tuna, that's protein and fat,
And
right?
fat. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
but in terms of staying healthy, she
Yes.
should add in salads and vegetables. But the
Right.
the the third category with this that you have to look at is your hormones, whether it's HRT or it's bioidentical hormones. Adding estrogen when you're in perimenopause, artificially adding estrogen, reduces dementia by 67%.
Oh, now
67%.
that's that's something we all need to know.
Yeah. And, when I say this, people get upset. They go, I can't have estrogen. Why would you say that? And I'm like, well, if you can't have estrogen, now find another way to develop the same pathways, right? Because
Yeah.
like if you're having like night sweats with perimenopause, half a cup of edamame will stop you getting night sweats. But by the same token, the amount of estrogen you'd get from half a cup of edamame is something you could do if you can't take estrogen artificially. But don't
Right.
ignore it, right? So my
Right.
mother has dementia, and I'm very clear about the fact that this is something I need to worry about. So I
Hmm.
make sure that my brain function stays right, but also that my hormones are, and I have estrogen, I have progesterone, and I have testosterone every single day.
Wow. Wow. Oh, thank you so much for telling us all of this. Seriously, I'm going to be on a mission when when we hang up. I really stuff that like some of the stuff you're talking about I've heard before, but most of it not. And I just appreciate that. Um, what do you think some of the biggest mindset blocks are for women struggling in midlife? And how do you think we can shift them?
It's really hard for us to if when I look at me, for example, I've been a single parent my entire adult life. I thought my job was look after my kids. There's no place in there where I thought my job was to look after me, right?
Right.
And every woman, we're all so outward facing. I would say we have 3 layers of people pleasing that we're brought up with, just in case, just to make us all fully tied and trussed up, is we people please with people, we people please with family, and we people please according to our culture. So we are really bound into the concept of people pleasing on every single avenue of our lives. So it's very hard to break out of it. But the whole point of that means that you do not have any inward facing approval mechanisms. They're all external facing. So you
Mhm.
really, really need to develop a mindset where you matter because perimenopause is such a game of detective because every single woman is different. So you've got to work out what works for you. You really need to go inward. You really need to pay attention to yourself. You need to focus on yourself. And you cannot do all of that if you're running around looking after everyone but you.
Yes.
Nature is so clever. Like your vagina dries up, your sex drive disappears. You don't want to eat food. You can't sleep. You're irritable. Nature does everything to go, listen, stop looking at anyone else. Just look at you.
Yes. Yes. So important. Just
Yeah.
so important. So what about confidence? What's the one thing that you wish women knew about reclaiming their confidence with their bodies and their lives?
So the thing that I coach to, that I speak about all the time, and I just don't hear anyone else ever saying this, is that there is a very big difference, and it's very relevant for us as women. There's a very big difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. Self-confidence is the things that you do. They're external facing. You can have respect for it. Like if you trained as a lawyer, if you brought up three kids and you ran a beautiful home, whatever the things are that you do that are external, those are very much based on self-confidence. Self-esteem is what you think of yourself.
Mm.
Now, it doesn't matter how much self-confidence you have if you don't have any self-esteem.
I think if they have self-confidence but lack self-esteem, then are they not living in that imposter syndrome?
Everything is bad. You get inflammatory reactions in the body because you're always fighting yourself. It's imposter syndrome. It's over nurturing. It's dealing with overwhelm. It's giving to everyone but yourself. I mean, I'm literally describing every woman we know that hasn't looked, poured into her own cup.
Yeah.
So we just don't understand that there's difference. So I've coached very, very famous women, like globally famous women, and I've coached globally famous men as well. And one of the interesting things for me about this, where it comes to women, is that this is prevalent no matter how famous and how rich the women are.
Wow.
I have a woman who worked for a company, BlackRock, and she was a coaching client. And she was like, "Oh my God, I have to run home for my coaching session because I'm going away tomorrow." And I'm like, "So why do you have to run home?" She goes, "Oh, because I have my two sons and my husband at home and I have to cook them 3 days worth of meals." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" Number one, you earn over £1 million a year. Pay someone to do it. Number two,
Absolutely.
because we don't have as much of the culture of ordering it. Number two, your husband doesn't work because their business had crashed about 5 years ago. I was like, number two, he doesn't work, so let him cook one meal. Number three, your sons are 16 and 18. They can all cook one, but it took a huge shift. That's
Yes.
low self-esteem. That's I only have value if I serve.
Right. Oh
I
my
only have
goodness.
value if I please you. I only have
Oh,
value if you like me.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that example. I think that that's going to hit home for
Yeah.
a lot of women who are listening to this.
Well,
So for,
we taught each of them to cook one meal. So we started off with each of the men had one
yeah.
day that was theirs, and
Yeah.
then that broke the back of it, and then it changed completely.
Yeah. 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 We tend to think we have to do it all, but we just have to stop and learn to delegate. Say,
Yes.
I'm not doing it like this anymore. Yes.
Yeah, it's not my responsibility to do all of it.
Yeah, my 14-year-old grandson who's with us right now has learned to do his own laundry. I'm not doing your
Love that.
laundry. Yeah. And I mean, one day he's going to need to be able to do his own laundry for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
So, what's your personal wellness and mindset ritual that keeps you grounded and thriving, especially while you're doing such powerful work?
Um, for me, it's my first stop every single day is for me to think where I'm in alignment or out of alignment. So when I wake up, or not even when I wake up, like I used to have those 3 hour rituals in the morning. Now they're like, give me tea and just get out of my way.
Yeah.
But it's something I do all day, every day, where if I'm somewhere and I don't feel good, I stop and I think, oh, why don't I feel good? And I find the thing and I'm like, oh, I don't feel good because I'm scared that this and this is going to happen and it makes me feel bad. Okay, that's terrible. What am I going to do about that? Well, I can't do anything about it. And I'll break it down and I call it unpacking. I unpack it
Yeah.
all till I get to the core emotion. The core emotion is I'm scared I'm not good enough.
Yes.
Well, okay, so what's the worst that can happen? This is the worst that can happen. What happens if the worst happens? Will we survive it? Yes, we will. Okay, so I take myself. So
Mhm.
emotionally, I do that all the time. I do not let something like that fester in my system because it holds me back. So I don't want anything to hold me back, so I'm not going to do that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I eat phenomenally well all the time. And it's just become a habit. So I eat really, really well. I try, like even now I was on an airplane and I carried in the plane a soup that was made at home and a salad, and I ate my food because it was organic and it was delicious and it was well made, and that's what I ate instead. So
Yeah.
I don't eat out as much. I probably eat out maybe less than 2, 3% of my meals. Everything else is made at home and it's with the best ingredients I can find. Unless I'm traveling, in which case it goes up.
Yeah.
So I'm really careful with that. I have a very distinct exercise schedule that I follow mostly. Again, with travel, it's a whole, you kind of have to work it out and make sure. But then if I can't do something, then I go walking. And I'll walk to wherever I'm going for an hour instead of doing the thing. So it's the little things that you just do every day because you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
some people stay in one spot all the time, and I used to do that. And this year I travel all the time, so I've had to adjust what I'm doing.
Right, right. And I really loved what you said, you call it unpacking, because that's, I think, our biggest problem is we internalize things that aren't even necessarily real. It hasn't happened yet. It probably won't happen, but yet that's the thing that's holding us back from doing whatever it is that we want to do.
Yes. And the fear of it, I always use this when I'm coaching. This is what I use as an example. I'm like, with all of us, with every situation, with every human, with everything we're doing, every thought process, everything has the lowest common denominator and the highest common denominator. And what we do is we try and push to the goals. We always like aim higher, aim higher, aim higher. The problem with this is that if you don't fix this stuff, you just aim and then you bounce back. You aim, you bounce back. It's a lottery. I won 100 million. I'm back to where I was. Oh, I married this amazing era. I'm back to where I was. You know, that thing. And
Yes.
actually, you have to be super focused on clearing the junk at the lowest common denominator so that instead of trying to move this, what you're actually doing is moving your lowest common denominator higher because you've removed all the junk that's here. So the other way of saying is that if I look through a window, it doesn't matter how much the scenery outside the window changes if the window's dirty. I just can't get through.
Right.
It's really important. So I spend a lot of time cleaning and clearing and unpacking crap that as a human, as a woman, as a mother, I naturally carry with me. I
Yes.
naturally go, God, that's really terrible. And I did a really bad job. Oh my God, why did I do that? Oh, you're human. You just think you're stupid at things. And it's
Yeah.
just okay to think that,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, so why did we think we were stupid? Well, because we're stupid. No, 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 that's not good. So you're human, right? You need to unpack
Yeah.
that and go, yeah,
Yeah.
this is not that. And then you unpack it and go,
Yeah.
where did that come from? Why? So if you can learn to clear as much rubbish across the bottom, like you did with your grandson, his lowest
Yes.
common denominator is somebody else should do my laundry. His
Right.
highest common denominator is, oh, well, I'm a really cool boy that does let's go. So you're like, no, we're going to clear this thought process. You raised his lowest common denominator and gave him a sense of power and control by teaching him laundry. Now his upper limit can be higher.
Ah. Oh, what a great example. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till I talk to him when he gets home from school today. What else can we teach you? No, that's fabulous. Thank you. I have really, really enjoyed our conversation, and you are such a great, great wealth of information for women. And I appreciate you so much being willing to come on my podcast and speak to 99% of our audience is female. I do have one last question I'd like to ask you, though. If you could whisper in the ear of every woman out there that's struggling right now, what would you tell them?
You know, I think maybe get more bloody minded because I honestly think that the only thing that's different to me and maybe the millions of women that didn't do this is that I am just relentless. I
Hmm.
don't stop.
Hmm.
I think to me, no is the beginning of a sentence, not the end of a sentence. And I don't want them to think bigger or think this. I don't want any of that. I just don't ever give up. I am utterly relentless. I'm utterly relentless. And also, what I do is I think that if I think of something, I just try and make it happen. And then if that's not working, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let me just change it. Will it work here? Let me change. I just Completely.
Right.
I wanted in Poland to set up a group of mastermind coaching businesswomen because Poland has 35% on women entrepreneurs. It's the largest number of women entrepreneurs in Poland.
Wow.
And so I happened to meet a fantastic Polish woman who's a businesswoman. I was telling her my idea. She goes, "Oh my God, come to Poland, talk at the business school. Let's see if we can get a group together." I was like, okay. So I paid, I came. And and I did this talk, and we ended up with three women at the end of that who said, okay. And then I didn't say, well, three women, that's a huge failure. And I showed up and I did the class for three women, and then we got six. And then I showed
Yes.
up and we did the class for six, and now we have eight, you know?
Yes.
And
Oh,
so we just set up this thing that
yeah.
didn't exist 3 months ago.
Yes.
And so there's
Oh, sorry.
failure
Yes.
is failure is not a thing in my I don't understand the point of failure. I can
Yes.
feel bad, but I never
Yes.
feel like I'm a failure.
Right. Right. I always say, you know what, if you need a day to hide under the blankets, then take the day, but get up the next day. Don't
And
stay
we
under the covers.
yeah.
Get up and carry on. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it so much. Now, I want everyone to know that if you would like to reach out to Geeta, we will have all of her details for you in the details section, how you can find her, how you can go to her website. If you're looking for something that, some way that she can help you, all of that information is going to be there for you. So we'll make it nice and easy for you to find her. I just want to say thank you again. I appreciate you greatly for being willing to do this and come on and help to educate all of us.
Oh,
I feel smarter. Thank you.
it's such a pleasure, honestly. I'm so grateful.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for coming and watching this episode of Women Like Me, Stories in Business. And we will see you next time.